Io ti battezzo Luna Rossa.
Luna Rossa!
A tutto
Brava
gas!
Pirelli in acqua!
A tutto gas!
Checco Bruni, helmsman with Luna Rossa. Now, I don't know, looking at it, about the exact depth of the cockpit, but it looks really deep. So how do you actually manage to see out? Yeah, no, our eyes just peep out from the top. On these boats, when you're steering it, do you feel a light steering on the wheel, or is it quite heavy? Yeah, the steering has to be absolutely balanced on these boats. It can't be like we saw on the American boats in the last America's Cup, where you saw Dean Barker working really hard to control it. But you also don't want it too light, because then you lose that sensitivity. So it's really important for it to be balanced. So you can modify it. Yeah, absolutely, of course. And it's very important you get that right.
Sui rapporti dei passaggi degli steering cables.
Certo.
Now, I think the important thing here is the aerodynamics. So let's talk about that. And it's incredible the work that's been put into that. Well, the thing about these America's Cup boats is they have to generate, amongst many other things, they've got to generate like a cushion of air underneath for them to travel on. Yeah, that's right. You know, something that when I first started in 2000 in the America's Cup, it was something we didn't even think about, but now it's fundamental to the design. And what about on boards? What sort of crew can we expect? Right, you see the two big holes at the back of the hull. Well, those are for the cyclors, and the two holes, the smaller holes at the front, that's for us who use the energy that the cyclors produce, and it's important that we use that intelligently. And as you pointed out, it's 4 cyclors this time as opposed to 8 in the last Cup. Is there a way of knowing how many watts they produce? What sort of athletes do they need to be? Well, they are athletes who in 20 minutes generate a minimum of 420 watts, and that's a minimum. We've got guys who produce more than that. What will be interesting is if and when we do more than one race a day, there'll come a moment where we will need substitutes, and so everyone will need to be ready to step on board and cycle.
Noi siamo abituati a conoscervi come la barca che in quel ruolo lì ha e aveva dei
Now, in the past, you had a lot of rowers. Well, some of them are still with us, because rowing gives you really strong legs, and so they're an important resource for us. But we've also integrated with Paolo from cycling,
Paolo Simeon, che è un ragazzo che viene dal ciclismo.
Paolo Simeon, the cyclist. But we do still have plenty of rowers. And we've also got Enrico Voltolini, for example, from sailing, otherwise known as the captain. And they're all lads who don't just pedal, but they also have worked really hard to get this boat into the water and to get us to this point. And there's a big congratulations and thanks to them for that. Now, when we watch on TV, we can hear the conversations on board are pretty much managed and led by the person who's at the helm. How essential is that communication? Oh, hugely important, because it has to be only what is necessary. We've only got one channel to communicate on, so if we're using that for unnecessary communications, then we're blocking it from actually being useful for necessary communication. Now, in the last Cup, there were just 2 of us on the mic. This time there'll be 4 of us on the mic, with the mic open all the time. The cyclors will also have mics, but they tend to not speak that much. They tend to be a lot more out of breath.
No, che velocità avete raggiunto? Il massimo? Avete
What
avuto un
speeds have you
picco
managed to
eclatante?
reach? What speeds? So, with the AC40, we've managed to get above 50 knots. Many times above 50 knots, in fact. We managed around 52, 53 knots. We've never managed to beat 55, though. And that 50 knot all seemed a really difficult wall to break down, but we managed that. Now, have you managed to form any opinion on your opponents? Well, it was obviously really interesting to see the first 2 unveil their boats. I have to say they're very similar boats to these as far as the hull concept is concerned. Alinghi has a slightly more aesthetically captivating cockpit, with the back of the hull being slanted downwards. But if we're talking about the hull itself, the aerodynamics, the performance of the hulls, we think it's going to be pretty similar amongst the boats. But obviously we can't talk about the foils because we've not seen anyone foil yet.
Quella è una parte estremamente importante della vostra performance.
Assolutamente.
Quella piccola parte che è
isn't
l'unica
it?
immersa.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like your tyres in MotoGP. We don't have the wear and tear factor like you do on rubber tyres. But for us, we've got the wet factor or the waves. So we can have foils for flatter seas and a foil for choppier seas. And in fact, the conditions are likely to be very different from Auckland and more difficult, yeah? And how difficult will that make it for those who are flying the boat? The flight controllers. Well, look, you can see right here how little wind it takes to actually move the boat sideways, and that tells you how light it is, but it also tells you how much volume there is in the skeg below, and it's that keeps the boat afloat and helps it rise on the water. And so with the slight wind that we've got here, it leans over to one side. But this is something we saw in the last Cup as well.
Quando si progetta una barca così non si tiene minimamente conto però della velocità che la barca deve fare quando disgraziatamente.
How much is thought about the displacement factor?
La barca viene sacrificato moltissimo della velocità
the
della
boat
barca.
loses speed in the displacement factor when it drops off the water. And in Barcelona, that takeoff moment will be very important. You'll be talking a lot about that in TV commentary. Minimizing the amount of time it takes to accelerate out of the water and take off is going to be vital. You can't spend, a minute trying to take off once you've splashed down every time it happens in light winds.
In quella fase. La distribuzione dei volumi diventa importante.
And distribution of weight and volume on board will also be important in that situation.
Che cosa si prova ad andare a
Can you
50 nodi
explain
con una barca veloce?
in your own words that we can understand what it's like to be on a boat doing 50 knots? Is it just crazy and full of vibrations, or is it fluid and peaceful? Because I just can't imagine it.
Sicuramente all'inizio sei tanto emozionato, per cui
Well, to start with, when you first foil, it's amazing, and you get really emotional, and you can't take it all on board, really.
Quando inizi, fai la prima volta foiling, quella sensazione di leggerezza,
and that sense of lightness when you foil for the first time. And that noise of the water that you would normally expect, that you're used to having in your ears, that just disappears. And the first time that happens, you're just amazed.
Mezzo foiling ti possa succedere è la stessa sensazione, perché ti succede
So
per la prima
whatever
volta.
foiling boat you're on, when that happens for the first time, you're amazed.
Quando si tratta magari di andare verso un incrocio.
Now, what's it like when you're heading to a cross on the race course? Because it's one thing doing it at 8 knots, it's another thing doing it at 50. Is it a moment of tension? Or have you just, are you calm because you've practiced it? No, absolutely not. You've got to be really focused. Checco Bruni, thanks so much.